Happy midday, especially if you are right around San Antonio, Texas, where it officially is the midpoint between sunrise and sunset right around now. Particularly relevant on Fridays for a lot of us because sunset is the latest time you can light the candles and drop everything you're doing and start with the Shabbos rules when it is the Jewish Sabbath. Sunset is the latest time. And that is relevant for what I am going to talk about, which may rub some people the wrong way. I don't care. I never care. I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be popular with everyone. I have my views and I have my values, and I don't care what a lot of people out there think. And that includes people who don't question anything the Trump family does. And I'm bringing this up right now because I'm not happy with Ivanka and Jared. And the latest news I heard this morning, which was talked about in synagogue at the morning prayers, again, it could be fake news. It was reported originally in Politico, so take everything with a grain of salt. We don't know what the actual story is. However, we have had this situation before around the inauguration, and it wasn't fake news. It turned out to be real. So basically, I have as the topic here, Ivanka and Jared get a pass from some rabbi to enable them to violate Shabbos again, the Jewish Sabbath, of course. And then I put in parentheses, who knew such things were so easy to obtain? And this is so that they can travel on Shabbos in their effort to bring peace to the Middle East or something, as if they have as if Trump has no control over his schedule, as if the day he's going to be there. Is he going to be in Israel Monday or Tuesday, is it? As if they couldn't travel before or after. And I included there a Beavis and Butthead clip. I loved that show, still do, but loved it in the mid-90s. And there was an episode with rapist Bill Clinton, who was then President Bill Clinton. And, well, it doesn't matter, but Beavis and Butthead are given a so-called pass, and it's making fun of the whole pass concept, and that's obviously relevant here, so that they will stay as far away from the school. Hopefully, it doesn't work out that way, of course, when Bill Clinton comes to visit. So I left that link. Also, I'm trying my best. I can have an edge to me. I know that. It's probably something I have worked on. I've definitely said some things and ruined some relationships because of things I've said, because of a thing called lashon hara, which is negative speech, talking bad things about people when it's not really necessary. And I'm going to try my best to avoid that there. I will slip inevitably, but I am being conscious. I put a few hashtags in there that are relevant. God will not be mocked. Hashtag God will not be mocked. And hashtag POTUS, you may want to reread your Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, in the sense that it's nice that he's going to be the first president to go to the Western Wall, not the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, which is the only thing basically remaining from the temple in Jerusalem, that he's going to go there. Good. But more importantly, I want the embassy moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. I don't care if the Muslims might be offended. They're perpetually aggrieved, and they're testing you. They're playing you. They always do this. I want to see the real support for Israel and the Jewish people, basically one and the same that was promised during the campaign. Maybe, I can give the benefit of the doubt. Ivanka is there to make sure that he doesn't get erratic and slip up. I don't know. But this is my view. Okay. Should I read that article? Let me read that first article. Or, in summary, I'll just summarize that and get to the comments. I don't want to go too long here. I see Rabbi Joseph Isaac Korf is here, and he's going to have some comments. Please put them in the comments section. Any of you, put them in the comments section. Did I put the whole thing in here? Do I have the whole article? Yes, I do. Okay, let me read you first of all the article, then get to a few thoughts I have about it, just so people will understand what I'm talking about. I'm going to take my time here. Like, the Jewish Sabbath is important, but it's also not for another 5.5, more than that, hours here in Northeast Florida. The title from the Jewish Times, which is not where this was originally reported, but it's the source I'm using. Politico, I think, first did this story. Again, take it with a grain of salt. It's called Ivanka and Jared Get Rabbinic Permission to Fly on Shabbat. And I'll put my own thoughts in here and then get to some comment section. There's some long comments in here which I think are worthwhile. U.S. President's Jewish daughter and son-in-law will join him on Air Force One on Friday as he leaves for Middle East trip. There is a picture of Jared, not in a yarmulke. It's not one of the 613 commandments that you have to wear a yarmulke, as I'm doing right now, even though no one's taking pictures. Well, I'm on Facebook Live. And Ivanka in a sleeveless shirt. Both are fashion no-nos if you're really an observant Jew. A man should go out there having his head covered in some way. A yarmulke is not a commandment. And just having your head covered is not, but it's certainly accepted as someone who wants to call themselves an Orthodox Jew, as they do, and women generally don't leave their shoulders bare, period. And that's the picture of them. That may be chosen for a reason, but they let themselves be photographed that way. Okay, here's the article. U.S. President Donald Trump's daughter, Ivanka, and her husband, Jared Kushner, both Orthodox Jews, have reportedly received rabbinic approval to fly with the president as he sets off for a Middle Eastern and European trip on Friday that will take him to Saudi Arabia, Israel, Italy, and Brussels. Well, the Vatican and Brussels, but I guess he's going to be in Italy too. And I don't think I read through this before that I saw who the rabbi is. For all we know, it could be one of the lesbian rabbis who's a social justice warrior who Barack Obama liked to have at his Passover, Seder, or Hanukkah themed dinners. I don't know. Maybe it isn't here and I just missed it. Okay, a White House official said that the two it doesn't say the name, said that the two have received a rabbinical dispensation to join the president aboard Air Force One as he sets off on his first overseas tour, Politico reported on Friday. Now, keep in mind, if they're saving money, would they... Well, remember, Barack and Michelle took separate planes when they'd go on vacation. And I heard rumors, I can't confirm it, may have been a joke, but that the dog was put on a separate plane from Barack Obama and he got his own plane. I don't know, but it's not like everyone has to be on the same plane. And they could, of course, fly commercial, couldn't they? And there's enough room for Secret Service people, like was the case when the two homosexuals in New York started harassing. I don't think it was worse than harassing. Some exaggerated terms were used, but it was harassing, being rude to Ivanka on the plane when she was with her kids. Jewish law does not permit traveling on the Sabbath except in cases where there is a danger of risk to life. Anyone out there can correct me if I'm wrong. So, for example, Jewish doctors and medical personnel are permitted to drive to seriously ill patients, as are soldiers protecting the country's security. And Yom Kippur is even bigger of a deal than the average Shabbos. And remember, of course, Israel, the soldiers fought immediately when Muslims chose Yom Kippur as the day to invade in 1973, which Israel was in a very tough position. Thank you, President Nixon. And let's keep that in mind the next time you hear something like, oh, we couldn't bomb them then, we couldn't have a response then. It's the month of Ramadan. Keep in mind what the Muslims did there. That was a big thing during, was it the Bush administration or the Clinton administration? Bush 2 or Clinton? That we couldn't do it then because it's Ramadan. That would be unacceptable. All right, the president had given Jared the task of trying to broker a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. All right, no comment. I'm trying to avoid the Lashon Hara. I'm just wondering what possibly qualified him to do this. Maybe he's impressed that he was the one who managed to make it with his pretty, I don't know, with his pretty daughter, I don't know. But so Jared may play a senior advisory role in Trump's Middle East visit. If you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can. I guess I don't disagree with that as the wording, because nobody can probably, unless the Muslims make a major change. Trump told Kushner that at a gala a few days before his inauguration. Though it has been claimed several times in the past that Ivanka and Jared received rabbinic permission to break Shabbat, the White House has never stated which rabbi gave them the dispensation. In January, Mark Zell, the chair of the Republican Party in Israel, said a family spokesperson told him the couple had received a special dispensation to use a car to reach inaugural events after the onset of Shabbat. Now remember, Trump was inaugurated at 12. I know it was around the day, it was pretty much the exact day. No, it was a month after the shortest day of the year, but they had till like 5 o'clock, so we'll talk about that. And then they went to the inaugural balls and stuff, which is something they knew that they'd be photographed, which is a no-no. I'm planning on going to my nephew's bar mitzvah, but I'm not going to go to the reception in the afternoon, which pretty much violates Shabbos, and they're Reformed Jews. And but my sister's understanding; she doesn't expect me to be there. It would be a no-no to put yourself in a position where you might be photographed. Of course, I would not be as photographed as Ivanka would be at the inaugural ball where she and Jared went. Anyhow, not the biggest deal, but worth saying. And they certainly could have been in from the parade in plenty of time to be doing Shabbos at their residence by sundown. Just saying. Okay. However, Mark Zell, we're talking about told the Times of Israel he did not know which rabbi had given the dispensation. In October, Kushner spent part of a Shabbat huddled with his father-in-law and other advisors amid the fallout from a scandal in which Trump was heard making lewd comments about women, according to the New York Times. Of course, he could have walked there, so it wouldn't be that bad a violation. It might not be in the spirit of Shabbos, but if he walked there and was not using like recording equipment and stuff, it might not be that big a deal, actually. Life or death? Probably not. Ivanka Trump, who converted to Judaism before her marriage to Kushner in 2009, described her family's Shabbat observance in her new book, Women Who Work. Now, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. From sundown Friday to Saturday night, actually, it's not sundown, Ivanka. It's she said from sundown Friday to Saturday night. Really, it ends at nightfall, which is generally about 35-40 minutes later. My family and I observed the Shabbat, she wrote. During this time, we disconnect completely. No emails, no TV, no phone calls, no internet. By the way, with TV, it's not in the spirit of Shabbos, but if you have the TV on before the Sabbath, it's not necessarily a technical violation if it's still on and you even watch it. I have walked very slowly during postseason baseball season, not any years recently, it hasn't been an issue for the Phillies, past sports bars where they had big windows, and maybe taking a peek at the TV. Just so happened to do that. So just for the record, TV is not a violation. It's turning on the TV. Well, it's not in the spirit, but it's not necessarily a violation. It's turning the TV on and off that's so bad. And Ivanka continued, we enjoy uninterrupted time together, and it's wonderful. It's enormously important to unplug and devote that time to each other, she wrote. Well, it's not really just about unplugging and relaxing. We'll get to that too, she wrote. We enjoy long meals together. We read. We take walks in the city. We nap and just hang out. Okay, that's good. Her kids are pretty young, let's not forget. Just some other thoughts I had. Jerusalem, I mentioned. These are notes, so I may go all over the place. Jerusalem, the embassy needs to be there. That's what President Trump promised, and more than that, he's having some problems now. They're giving him a hard time. They're not backing down. I don't think there's much to the impeachment charges at all, but it would be nice if God were on his side. I'm not a prophet, but I imagine God will be a little more receptive in looking out for President Trump should he keep his promise and finally move the American embassy that has long been in Tel Aviv. It wasn't an issue before 1967 because Israel only got reunited Jerusalem in a defensive war in 1967. But in the last 50 years, it's been promised and hasn't happened. Now, I imagine God would look favorably if the embassy is indeed moved to Jerusalem, as he promised to do. Not that other presidents didn't promise that too. And by the way, that intelligence that was shared, probably not an impeachable offense, but it was Israeli intelligence. They got superior intelligence. And then President Trump apparently felt the need to share it with Russia. Like it's his prerogative. Well, we're all allies, are we? Well, I remember a guy named Jonathan Pollard being in jail for a long time after he shared intelligence information related to Israel's security. A lot of Israelis get killed by terrorists for sharing American information there. He was in jail for many years till he was an old man. So, if that's okay to do, President Trump, why don't you write a check to Jonathan Pollard and compensate him for what he did at most in a very similar situation. And by the way, the most popular story in the Times of Israel right now, I checked, former Israeli spy masters rip into Trump, say Israel must reassess intel sharing. Israelis have good intelligence. They don't mess around there. They don't have that luxury. And just a few more things about Ivanka and Jared and my evaluation of them. Again, I'm trying to avoid Lashon Hara. I'm going to say this in the most polite way possible. Ivanka and Jared were dating before they converted. You're not supposed to convert for a person so you can marry that person. It's pretty clear. We're not talking about reform and conservative Reconstructionist Judaism. We're talking about Judaism, otherwise known as Orthodox Judaism, the kind that has lasted through the centuries, the millennia. You're not supposed to do that. I've seen attractive people. I'm now single. I'm divorced. No kids, fortunately. And I was very charmed. I've known the limits when someone's going through a conversion. Just saying, that's not supposed to happen. In some cases, it happens after the fact anyhow, especially when there are kids involved. You're really not supposed to convert so you can marry one person. But the issue ultimately is everything on the table. How sincere is the conversion? How much are you going to keep all 613 commandments? I was wary of Jared, by the way. You see what I'm wearing on my head? I should probably wear one that's not black, because it may not be obvious I'm wearing a yarmulke and I have pretty thick hair. But a Jew is not supposed to go out in public. It's one thing, and this is very public when I'm on Facebook Live. Usually I have over 100 people watching in the end, one of these. You're not supposed to go out clearly with a bald, bare head. Jared's done that, and I saw him do this, and I was wary of this. He would go out to the campaign events while Donald Trump, President Trump now, was wearing a Make America Great Again hat. I can understand not wearing a yarmulke, not wanting to call attention to your Judaism. There are a lot of swing voters who may not be into that. I get it. Nothing was preventing him from wearing a Make America Great Again hat, right? I mean, Trump was wearing that. Why couldn't he? Just something, it's not, make it or break it situation. I was just a little wary of that situation. And I mentioned the inaugural ball thing. I don't think they should have been there. And just in contrast, I mentioned with, a very lovely young lady going through a conversion, keeping the distance, because respecting that. You're just not supposed to do it. You're not even supposed to flirt with someone going through that. You don't want to influence the sincerity of their conversion, give them other things. It's hard enough when people do it sincerely. And I know a lot of people who've done it, especially here in Northeast. For some reason, I know a lot in the Jacksonville area. But just keeping in mind the Jacksonville thing, here in Ormond Beach, I decided one morning, I just woke up at 2:30 that I could make it, possibly, if everything went right, to Ormond Beach, where I am at the moment, for a bar mitzvah, someone in a family I care about. And I was planning on not going. I said, you know what? I can make this if everything goes right. Except, as is often the case, I got in a lot of traffic around the D.C. area, and I wasn't going to make it to Ormond Beach before sundown. But I could make it to Ponte Vedra Beach. You saw the rabbi's daughter there last week in my midday report. Same report this time last week. And I called, but the reality was, when the sun went down, and I had time that's figured it out, I was 13 miles away from there. I had not the most comfortable shoes on either. It was a very nice night, by the way. I pulled over, got out of the car, literally 30 seconds before sundown, had nothing in my pockets, wasn't carrying anything, threw the keys under the car, I think it was a Holiday Inn Express near the Mayo Clinic, and walked 13 miles to be there. So, it's a big deal. It's a big deal if you choose to call yourself an Orthodox Jew. It's, by the way, a big deal if you're Jewish and you don't. But I'm saying, especially if you present yourself that way, you're not supposed to be doing this. So, I walked 13 miles a year and maybe 4 months ago. And just wanted to point out that we voted for Donald Trump. We didn't vote for Ivanka and Jared. And God is in charge. So Middle East peace, a lot of things, I think they might be okay. Even if Ivanka and Jared want to join, if they traveled on another day. I'm just saying. Now some comments from people. From a rabbi's wife, when I posted this story on Facebook, she wrote, this is in the Philadelphia area, they definitely should have flown earlier or just gone after Shabbos. Not sure who this rabbi could be. Me neither. He's not mentioned. But the rabbi who did Ivanka's conversion, a guy named Lookstein in a very fancy synagogue on the Upper East Side, where, by the way, one of the guests on my show, Backlash, I think he belongs to that one. His conversions are no longer considered valid in Israel, I believe. I haven't checked the story lately. He was the one who converted Ivanka. So even though we're not supposed to question it, okay, I get it. But his conversions are no longer valid in Israel, or the ones he did starting at a certain date. He was sent a message and basically the public, don't convert through this guy if you want to be considered a real Jew in Orthodox terms, in the terms of Israel. That was the one who did the conversion. Just saying. So there are going to be people out there who are skeptical anyhow of how Jewish she is. We're not here to question whether she was sincere about her conversion. Now someone, Davis Knight, hey, that's fine, you can question it, you're not Jewish. He wrote, why doesn't she just stop pretending to be Jewish? Raphael Bratman writes, if you can't produce peace in the Middle East, nobody can. Trump told Kushner at a gala a few days before his inauguration, and he has some emojis which are laughing and skeptical of that. Then someone I don't know, who's a friend of a friend on Facebook, not even a Facebook friend, he talks about the Lashon Hara thing, and he says, this isn't Lashon Hara according to the laws of Lashon Hara, that's negative speech because it's public knowledge, and it's a case, this is just interesting, and it's a case that was publicly ruled on by a rabbi, and because it deals with a special situation, those who are discussing it should do so without negativity or mean comments. But this is a public conversation. By the way, if I said what I was really thinking, it would be Lashon Hara. I'm definitely holding myself back here. Davis Knight just joined. I just mentioned you a minute ago. That's funny, you just missed it. Then Stephen Langen writes, who I'm guessing is not Jewish, I don't know him, he wrote, not Jewish, but does it really matter when someone flies on an airplane and their conversion out of love to another's faith? I think it's a very sincere question from him. I don't know him. I wasn't looking at him when he said it, and I don't even know who he is. But I responded, it absolutely does matter in terms of both being when someone flies on an airplane and their conversion out of love to another's faith. And I'll get to flying the airplane, being on the airplane versus being the pilot on it, which is a distinction, but I think that's in the comments section, someone mentions it. And then he responded to me, how many angels can dance on the head of a pin matter, whether it is? No, Shabbos is one of the 10 commandments. It's not fine, it's not, I know what that refers to. It's priests who were sitting there debating minutiae in Constantinople while the Turks, funny, they're in the news again, were attacking the city and eventually killing all the Christians, as Muslims like to do. But the dancing on the head of a pin, it's like focusing on the details. But that's not true, because this isn't life or death. I don't know how you can make the case it is. And, you know, Israelis certainly, when they were attacked on Yom Kippur, could fight. I mean, there's no question about that. This is, they don't need to be doing this. It's not minutia. I'm not going to be the one to question the sincerity of the conversion. It's totally unnecessary, in my opinion, though. I don't know why it's happening this way. Now, let's go to some very informed comments, probably better than my analysis, that I found at the Times of Israel. Some of them are long. I apologize. It's a little windy here. It doesn't look like it's going to rain. It feels like the kind of wind that here in Northeast Florida, in May, sometimes precedes rain, but no, the sky is totally blue with some clouds in it. Okay. Here's someone in Bet Shemesh, Israel. Jewish, he writes, and there's going to be a response to this. Jewish law does permit traveling on the Sabbath, for example, on a boat. If you were on a cruise, you are permitted to travel on the Sabbath. One is permitted to travel in an elevator on the Sabbath elevator. You're not pushing anything there, and there are some questions about that. Finally, it is the driving of a motor vehicle on the Sabbath by a Jew, which is forbidden. So this article is misleading. It's not so simple, and we should certainly not judge. Then someone in Tallahassee, not that far from here, responds to that. You are incorrect. One may not embark on a cruise on Thursday, Friday, or Shabbat. And the fact of the matter is, you can't really fly you can't fly 25 hours. Shabbos is 24 and a half, 25 hours. And there's really no flight you can take that is that long. I don't think so. I mean, I always see the longest flight in the world, but I don't think there's anything more than 20 hours. Maybe it was like Newark to Melbourne or something like that. But I don't think there's any flight you could take that would be completely on Shabbos. You just can't fly that long. Though I guess you could go, do some funny things with the international date zone, or flying north to south around June 21st or December 21st, the shortest day of the year. But no, I don't think you're supposed to do that. You are incorrect. One may not embark on a cruise on Thursday, Friday, or Shabbat. On Thursday, well, if aboard a cruise reaching a port of call on Shabbat, Shabbat is the same as Shabbos. Some pronounce it Shabbos, some pronounce it Shabbat. Look, I'm not a native Hebrew speaker. I do it interchangeably, depending on who I'm with or what I'm just thinking at that particular moment. If aboard a cruise reaching a port of call on Shabbat, one may not depart unless embankment for the next port will be after Shabbat. And once debarked, may not allow any Jew to move his luggage, since that would involve carrying and likely... Okay, that's enough of that. Then the person responds to that. I know that. You don't think I know that, but fact is, there is a solution when you can travel on a boat on the Sabbath. Shabbat Shalom, it already is the Sabbath in Israel right now, I will add. But, I don't think so. And it's certainly unnecessary in this case. Especially, I would not be doing it if I had been converted by a rabbi whose conversions have been highly questioned. Just a thought. And then someone writes, did the rabbi get the okay from God? And if they didn't get the rabbi's permission, would they be damned forever? Okay. Now someone in Charlotte, who sounds like they have a Jewish name, writes, that's just part of the BS covering Ivanka and Jared. They're ethical, in quotes, Jews when it suits them. They like to make Shabbat, in quotes, family time. How can Jews be window dressing for fascism? Okay, then, yeah, to work for an impetuous, petulant, vicious, racist imbecile. Okay, we're not going to do that any further, but the first part of that, I think, is reasonable. Yeah. Someone else who doesn't like Trump, someone else writes, they should have just flown earlier and not made this public. End of the issue. Then something with too many Jewish terms that I just don't want to have to translate every one. Someone writes, I don't really care what religion the Kushners practice, but don't announce your faith with self-righteousness. But that's questioned. How are they being self-righteous? But that same person then writes elsewhere, I didn't know we have a Pope rabbi who can give dispensation. That's a reasonable point. Then someone else writes, they try to tie it into... Well, let me read this. The irony and hypocrisy when you practice and preach a religion who says you only break Shabbat in life and death situations to go negotiate an arms deal for weapons that will kill countless people. And then someone responds to that, ooh, you're such a genius. If anyone can brilliantly connect obscure dots, it's definitely you. Of course, Trump had a lot of anti-war aspect to his campaign. He has been very critical of the Iraq war, and that's why neocons in Washington are so angry toward him. Look at what Bill Kristol and John McCain have been doing. The biggest war hawks there are, just about. Okay, then I'll read the beginning of this. Quote, Jewish law does not permit traveling on the Sabbath except in cases where there is a danger of risk to life. Then someone writes, even a non-Jew like me knows Jewish law is broader than that. During World War II, Orthodox groups were working to get Jews as far from the horrors of Eastern Europe as possible. Of course, that would be life and death. That involved coordination among people scattered from Eastern China and across Europe and onto the United States. The result was a Sabbath almost 2 days long. This is interesting, though. At a time when the situation was critical, although not of the ambulance driver variety. Orthodox rabbis, taking danger to life broadly, approved working on the Sabbath in that context. Working for peace in the Middle East, in a climate that's resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths, certainly qualifies. Give me a break. They don't need to be there. There's enough time during the week. Give me a break. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's a long post. I think that's the highlight of it. A good post, but too long. And a response to it. There are unfortunately no grounds for thinking a single human life could be saved by the Kushners traveling on the Sabbath rather than the day before. One can only conclude that if indeed they consulted a rabbi, he realized the impossibility of preventing the Sabbath desecration and counseled them on how to minimize it. Observant Jews should remember that one of the worst things we can do in our mouths or keyboards is to publicly denigrate a convert. I don't disagree with that. Look, I'm not questioning things there, but I am questioning this action, especially because it's very public and it's going to give a lot of ideas. Then someone responds, the same person who responded before, this is not the days of World War II and they are not doing underground work. It's called convenience. And then that same person writes, pour out your bitterness about FDR and USA Jews. The person I shortened it from really had some things to say about what, let me go back to that, about what the Jewish left said about liberal Jews. During that same time when Orthodox Jews around the world were desperately working to save their co-religionists, America's liberal Jews were, well, not quite doing nothing. Look, I just love pointing out their hypocrisy and foolishness. No, they were simply not doing the one thing they might have done to force FDR to act, threaten to vote Republican in the 1940 election. Actually, they were blocking the observant Jews who were trying to do everything they could to stop the Holocaust. They didn't want to make waves in a lot of cases. I'm not going to go into it much here, but they didn't want to seem too Jewish and have their own potential acceptance in some club that's not Jewish. I'm giving metaphors here, but they didn't want to call attention to themselves. They wanted to blend in and, sticking up for the Eastern European Jews might have jeopardized that. I'm probably exaggerating, but there's some truth to that. Now, let me read this. This will be fun. That they could not do. Vote Republican. Why? Because then and now voting Democratic is their most sacred duty. They voted for FDR in 1940. More recently, they voted for a sexual predator in 1992 and 1996. We didn't know quite the same details back then, but yeah. They voted for someone who attended an anti-Semitic church. I think church should be in quotes, by the way. They honored Muslims like Louis Farrakhan there in 2008 and 2012 and spent his early career as a lawyer defending Chicago's slumlords. They voted for a woman who viciously silenced women her husband had preyed on in 2016. If you want a rigid, intolerant, and even murderous faith, you need to look no further than to America's secular Jews. Indeed, it seems that is absolutely nothing. There is absolutely nothing that most American liberal Jews won't do to express their faith in liberalism. And they don't even need to bother to get the approval of their rabbi to do so. And yet many of them want to scream and screech about Ivanka and her husband, how they display their Jewishness. Quite frankly, you make me want to vomit. Okay, that was a digression. I'm certainly not coming at this from a liberal perspective. But back to the comments. I like this one by a Victor Stern. What utter nonsense. Just give a nice donation to a rabbi and get special rules just for you. The Trump legacy. No rules except for those they want. Okay, I don't know if it's about Donald Trump again, but I think, well, anyhow. Someone else. Jared Kushner is giving the world the wrong impression of what it means to be an observant Jew. I cannot believe any rabbi with knowledge would condone this flight. Even Atzala, that's the Jewish ambulance service, uses non-Jewish drivers to transport patients to the hospital on Shabbos. Some people think Shabbos comes with an on and off switch. It would be interesting why Ivanka was also traveling on Shabbos. Did she also get dispensation? I guess it is true politics corrupts. I guess that's a message that he is the one supposedly working on Middle East peace. I didn't hear that she was. She obviously has a role. Someone else just writes, Orthodox my ass. Then someone else... I would like to know how the dispensation was granted, since they could have waited 24 or so hours and flown out the next day on El Al or an American carrier with their Secret Service detail. And then someone else writes, or the day before. Yeah. And they, of course, there are plenty of other airlines that fly to Israel besides El Al, which does not fly on the Jewish Sabbath. Sorry about the wind. Yeah, someone really doesn't like Jews here. Blah, blah, blah. Tries to put in molesting little boys. Well, we're not talking about Anthony Weiner. He's not an observant Jew anyhow. Okay. Let me just see. Another comment from Tel Aviv. Just goes to show you, if you have the dollars, you will find a rabbi in quotes to give you permission. I am waiting for the dispensation on bacon. I wouldn't expect that to happen. And then someone else, this is the last thing I'm going to put in here. I suppose they couldn't possibly fly a few days earlier without all the presidential entourage and spend Shabbat on the ground. Okay, you probably get the point by now. Hopefully there will be some good comments in here, though, because I put this on a Friday afternoon, a lot of people who are very knowledgeable about Judaism are busy preparing for Shabbos rather than commenting here. Hey, I accept that. All right, early good Shabbos.